my name is Tori, this is Novel Life, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the end of the year book tag. How am I filming this already? How? I feel like February was like 2 months ago. How is it already December? How is it almost 2025? How is it possible? How? Anyway, I'm very excited to do this tag. I did it last year and I absolutely loved it. I think the creator of this was Destiny Sidwell. I'll have her original video linked down below, and I'll have all of the questions as well that I'm going to answer. I think there's like 25 of them. Now, the books that I'm going to talk about in this video, I do own them. Clearly, I own a lot of books, okay? But I felt like I was going to be like rapid fire answering, so I'm just going to like put the pictures up. I feel like that's so much easier. It's literally one of my favorite tags to do, so let's go ahead and jump into the questions because like I said, there's like 25 of them and I'm probably going to talk a lot, knowing me. The first one is most disappointing book of the year. So I definitely have a couple, and I don't like talking negatively about books, but there are just some books where I was either really hyped about them or books where I had high expectations just because the hype was real, or I've read other books from the particular author and I was very excited and it kind of was like very different. Now the first one is that it's Atalanta by Jennifer Saint. I've read a lot of books by Jennifer Saint. I think I have to read Hera. I think that's the only one that I have not read by her, and that came out this year. But Atalanta I think came out last year and I picked it up. I read it in January and I ended up giving it 3 stars. But I really like Jennifer Saint's writing, and I felt like the ending of this book was so out of the blue where I was like, ruined the book for me. Ruined the book. Now, she's more of a historical reimagining author where she takes like Greek mythology and retell it in a specific way, and I usually love them, but this one just did not work for me. Another one is Promise Me Not by Megan Brandy. So I read Say You Swear by Megan Brandy this year, even though I know that book has been out for quite a while. I was very excited, and this book I ended up giving 2 stars. I was so bored by it. These two characters you see in Promise Me Not was so hyped in the other books. Like our female character, she's pregnant, her father of her baby was, passed away tragically, and so it's like her finding love again, and it was like so drawn out, and I was just so bored, and I'm like, why is this a book right now? Why did she write this? So I was severely disappointed in that one. Powerless by Lauren Roberts, which I know a lot of people are not going to agree with me, and that's totally fine. When I read this book, I listened to the audiobook. I don't know if that's what it was. I was just bored the whole time. I didn't feel like there was a lot of chemistry. I also don't like the trials with like the training montage of our female character, and that's kind of like how she has this like chemistry with the hero. I just didn't like it. I feel like there's a million other fantasy romances that, are better, if that makes sense, and more hyped. Not more hyped. More just entertaining to me. So this one was just like a letdown. It just didn't live up to hype. It just didn't live up to the hype for me. I could talk about this one for quite a while, but there's Throne of Honor and Blood. This is the second book to The Crown of Oaths and Curses. Is that the book? I think that's the book. I have the first book. The first book was so amazing. I was like, I love this. It was so different of a fantasy romance. So I was I was like, so hyped for the second book, and there was just so many character changes, if that makes sense, like things that the characters were doing that did not make sense of what their character developed in the first book. So it was like, what the hell am I reading? Not great. And the one more recently I was disappointed in is The Songbird and the Heart of Stone by Carissa Broadbent. This has literally been one of my most anticipated releases since I knew that this book was coming out, because I love the Crimes of Nyaxia series, and this just did not hit for me. I was very bored. It was a 7 Depths of Hell, like 7 Levels of Hell retelling, and while I didn't want to stop reading it because I was invested in the character, I just didn't feel like it had like the wow factor that the other books do. So I don't know if I'm going to pick up the second book because it is a duology. I don't know. I haven't decided. I recently read it in November, so I'm still trying to figure out if I want to continue. But those are just some most disappointing book. The second question is underdog book of the year, and for me it's Metal Slinger. Now, to be fair, this book just came out and not a lot of people have started picking it up, but the people that I have seen that has picked it up are wowed by it, and let me tell you, it has been a very, very, very long time since I read a fantasy romance where I was wowed like I was in Metal Slinger. I loved this book. It was so good, so, like, it gripped me. I read it in less than 12 hours. Like, I read it between 2 nights because nighttime is where I physically read because the audiobook's not out yet. She has announced an audiobook is coming soon, which you bet your ass I will be rereading this book. But yeah, I was just so blown away by it. I put it in a reading vlog and someone commented actually, like, I haven't seen you this excited in a book in a really long time. And let me tell you, I still think about that book. Still think about that book. Such an underdog of the year. I want everyone to read it. Question number 3 is a book that was overhyped. So I have a couple. If He Had Been With Me, I forgot, Lauren Nolan? I forgot the author's name. This is more of a YA book. It is not a romance. Not a romance, which I went into this book thinking it was a romance. So we see the disconnect, right? I hated this book. I hated it. Also, A Little Life, I actually got rid of this book. I bought the physical book because a lot of people said they were crying. Now, I am someone who I do not like to read books like this, where it is like my life in a book, where it goes through all of the layers of having a disability and being chronically ill or having like issues like that, where basically I DNF'd the book. I did a whole reading vlog, but I did DNF the book, and I go into why I DNF'd it. Basically, it all comes down to, as someone who has a disability and a chronic illness, I was told that the character in this book, in The Little Life, that does have a disability, does commit suicide. That is not something I personally like to read because I do struggle with that, so I don't like to read that where it doesn't end up with a happily ever after, whether like romance or just like in their life, like if that makes sense. So that was just too triggering for me, and I was like, why do people like to read this? Like, why do they like to be this sad over a book? Like, it's not great. And then Heartless Hunter. I also did not like this book. I felt like it was overhyped, as in like a YA. Like, I feel like it's very up there with Powerless for me, so I feel the same way about those two. Okay, question number 4 is favorite book couples of the year. Johnny and Shannon, which, I mean, technically I read Binding and Keeping 13 last year, but I just reread them and I love them, and I'm glad that Binding and Keeping 13 came out traditionally published this year. Also, Rune and Lydia from Crescent City. I don't want to say too much other than that, but those two have stuck with me. The couple from Metal Slinger, I don't want to say names because it is a spoiler. That is all I have for those. Okay, favorite main characters of the year. So I have a couple of these. Claire and Gibbsy from Taming 7. I really love those characters. I love their story in that book. I love the characters from Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. I just loved the emotional connection I had to those characters. And I just related to our female character a lot, what she went through and what she, like, just how she's living her life and like the struggles that she has. And yeah, it just made me really emotional. So yeah, those are just some main characters of the year that I absolutely loved that I can think of right off the top of my head. Question number 6 is a book that surprised you. So I have two. The Women by Kristen Hanna, because I read a lot of historical fiction. I'm a lover of historical fiction. I have been for a couple of years now, but this was my first Kristen Hanna book, and I knew that she was an amazing author. I never doubted that, but I was not expecting to love The Women as much as I did and relate to it as much as I did, if that makes sense. I loved The Women so much. I was taken by surprise of how much I loved it and how much I love the story and how much I still think about that story even though I read it back in February. Yeah, I just really love that book, as well as Normal People by Sally Rooney, which is another author that is well beloved, and I know that she had Intermezzo that came out this year, but I never read a Sally Rooney book, so I was like, let me take it back to Normal People. I do want to watch the TV show. I have not brought myself to do that, but I do want to do that. But Normal People just really made me think. I love books like that. So lit fic is another genre that I definitely want to explore more in 2025 because of Normal People, because I was like, I really like this. Question number 7 is new author, like a new favorite author you've discovered this year. So I've actually read a lot of amazing authors. I read One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig, and she's become an author that I will read a lot of her stuff. Rebecca Ross, I read, what was the last book? Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. I read those 2 books at the end of last year. It was like the last 2 weeks of the year, basically. But she has become an author that I want to get to her backlist, but I know she has a book, I think, coming out next year, if I'm not mistaken. No, that's Rachel Gillig. I don't know what she has coming out next, but I'm definitely intrigued by her. Listina Connie. So I read her first published trilogy. It's all like contemporary romances, like interconnected standalones, and I loved them. Each book I loved more and more and more, but I love all the characters, And I love what she did with those books and how just like emotional the contemporary romances are. Rachel Snyder, because she wrote Metal Slinger, and now I'm obsessed. Olivia Rose Darling, I read Fear the Flames this year. I read it twice actually. I read the indie version, then I read the traditionally published version. So I've definitely become a fan of hers. There's, I feel like, a lot more, but I've only read like 1 or 2 books by them, so I wouldn't say that they're like an all-time new favorite, but those are just some definitely that I've read this year that I'm like, yeah, I really do. Obviously, Kristen Hanna. Duh. So question number 8 is a tricky one because it's quote unquote the happiest book that you've read, like happiest read of the year. And for me, I don't read, like, I don't think of like super adorable happy-go-lucky romances as happy. Like, of course they are happy books and I really enjoyed them, but like I love happy books as in like emotionally the characters have grown, there's a lot of character development. So like I would even consider like Normal People a happy read because, what's the word? Like I feel like it connected to my personal life a lot, like what I've gone through during that time, because I was around the same age, like I was a year or two younger than the characters during that time, like in 2011, 2012, 2013. I was graduating high school, so like I was going into college, exactly what they were. So I feel really connected to that, but it really made me like, I wasn't sad by the end of the book, but I really, really enjoyed it. Not The Women. The Women was not a happy book. That is not the happiest read. But yeah, that was the first one that came to mind because I do read a lot of romances and they do end in a happily ever after, but I'm not like yippee at the end of those books, if that makes sense. So maybe I'm just really weird, but that question was actually really tough for me and that was the only answer I could come up with. So question number 9 is the most frustrating book that you've read in 2024. The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. If I had to name one book, I hated that book. Like, I was so fed up because, listen, Frida McFadden writes a lot of books. She publishes a lot of books. She's a well-loved author, like thriller author, okay? So I was expecting like really good twists and turns, really good writing. What the hell did I read in The Boyfriend? I might have picked the wrong Frida McFadden book to read, but I read it and I hated it. I gave it 2 stars. I was not a fan. I did not like the writing. The twists and turns were stupid. The ending was stupid. Me and Jess at Peace of Books, we have a podcast together, The Bookshelf of Jess and Tori. We did a whole podcast episode on this book because we read it and we wanted to talk about it together. So you can go watch it if you want, but we really go in on that book and we really dissect the book to like pinpoint what exactly we liked and did not like and like why we didn't like it, which is interesting, and I'm so glad we did that. Question number 10 is best adaptation of the year. I mean, I've only watched Bridgerton, which is a book to TV adaptation this year. I watch a lot of oh, I lied, Dune. I did watch Dune this year. Dune Part 2 technically, and I really enjoyed that, but I haven't read the books. I mean, I want to. Will I? I don't know. But I do at some point want to read the books. Me and my husband watched those movies. We really enjoyed it. My husband actually rewatched Dune Part 1 and Part 2, which is it's like 5 hours of movies, 5 or 6 hours. On the way to Hawaii, we had a direct flight to Hawaii from Atlanta, so he watched like all that while I read. But yeah, I don't really watch a lot of TV shows that have book adaptations. But I also feel like because I just don't watch a lot of TV. I watch a lot of documentaries, so maybe I'm weird, but also that question was hard. Okay, question number 11 is the longest book you've read this year, and technically it's Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh, but that is a reread, and that book was 938 pages, which I love Binding Keeping 13. It's a comfort read for me, and sometimes I'll reread them when I want like a comfort. In terms of like new reads to me, it was House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J Maas, and that was 835 pages. So I had a reread that was the longest, but technically my technically longest like new read was the Sarah J Maas book. The shortest book I read this year was The Scepter by Jay Bree. I read this is a novella in the Crown of Oaths and Curses series, and I wanted to read those two before. There's 2 novellas. The shortest one is 87 pages, but I wanted to read both of those in preparation for the second book that came out. So yeah, that's my shortest book. Favorite cover of the year, Victoria Wilder's Bourbon and Lies. I love this cover. I'm obsessed with this style of cover. I don't know what it is. I love like the old-timey stuff. Immediately, this is where my mind went. I fucking love this cover, okay? Obsessed. Okay, question number 14 is a book you haven't stopped thinking about. Metal Slinger by Rachel Snyder, Normal People by Sally Rooney, The Women by Kristen Hanna, House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J Maas. I am a fan of that book. I know a lot of people had mixed reviews this year when it came out, but I loved that book. So 4 of those I have not stopped thinking about. Question number 15 is cringiest book that you've read this year. If He Had Been With Me. Did not like it. It was like, I've read a lot of YA books and that one was like YA, but like cringy YA. The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. Did not like those. Those two I think of. An unpopular book you loved, which I feel like with unpopular books, I usually don't like them, but I heard a lot of mixed feelings about House of Flame and Shadow this year by Sarah J Maas. Either people really enjoyed it and what she did with that book, no spoilers, but what she did with that book, or people loved it. And I'm someone who I just went along for the ride and I loved it, so I might be, that was the only unpopular book I can think of, because I've read, I mean, If He Had Been With Me, apparently a lot of people love that one and I hated it. I can't think of it like a quote-unquote unpopular book. I usually jump on the hype train most of the time. I love them. I love them. This was hard to see on Goodreads. I think they took this option away, or it's not available right now. But it's question number 17 is, what is the highest and lowest rated book you read this year, and do you agree? So my highest rated book is actually The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, which I read The Nightingale back in November, and I actually ended up giving this book 3 stars. So it's surprising to me that this is the highest rated book. Now, it has been out since 2015, so to be fair, it's had, you know, almost a decade of being out. I know next year they're coming out with the 10th anniversary edition of this book. I've read a lot of historical fiction books that I feel like did it better. So this one was kind of like for me, so I definitely don't agree. But I can't find the lowest book. Like, it doesn't give me the lowest book on Goodreads anymore. But I'm very interested to see what that would be. Question number 18 is favorite quote of the year. I do annotate a lot. I annotate books when I reread them, or if I just really want to, like if I'm reading a book for the first time and just a couple of quotes stick out to me. Now, one from Lucina Connie that I read, which is from The Deepest End of Love, is, how do you tell someone you're falling in love with them without freaking them out? And I love that so much, because sometimes love will just hit you out of nowhere for no reason with a specific person, and you're like, I've known this person for like 0.5 seconds. How do I tell them I'm falling in love? And I just love that. I thought it was a beautiful quote. It's so simplistic, but it's beautiful. And it's one that like sticks in my brain that I don't actually have to look up, if that makes sense. I love it. Also, hi Johnny. Hi Shannon. If you know, you know. I love it so much. Anyway, okay. Question number 19 is book with the most unique concept. So there's 2 I can think of, and I don't know if they're like the most unique in the world, but The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. I recently read this in November after hearing a lot of people talk about it. I think the paperback came out this year, and so I heard like a lot more people talking about it because the paperback came out. And the best way I can describe this book is, if you've watched Outlander and you love the TV show, but you don't want to read the books because they're too damn long, read this book, if that makes sense. But it's not set in Scotland or anything like that. So it just has a little bit of a time travel aspect that I really enjoyed. There was twists and turns, and I didn't know what to expect, and I really enjoyed it. Also, I love One Dark Window by Rachel Gillick, the Shepherd King duet specifically. I thought the magic system was really unique because they have these Providence cards that is how you get magic, and that's how you use powers and magic and stuff like that, rather than other fantasy romances where magic is kind of just like given to you, if that makes sense. Yeah, or like you're born with it or you're not. I thought that was like a unique concept, but I did read that at the beginning of the year. So question number 20 is a book you read that you'd want to reread. Meadowslinger. I already said that. Meadowslinger I definitely want to reread just because it was amazing. I'm actually currently in the middle of rereading the whole ACOTAR series, I think for only the second time. Probably in full the second time. I've read parts of like Mist and Fury and stuff like that before, but it's been like 3 or 4 years since I've reread ACOTAR, and I got the new covers because I actually have the original OG paperbacks that I don't want to annotate. So I bought the new covers, which I don't mind the new covers, if that makes sense. So yeah, I definitely want to reread those, but I'm very picky on what I want to reread. Obviously, Saving and Redeeming 6, love those 2 books. Question number 21, a reading goal reflection in 2025 reading goal. So I think on Goodreads I had my reading goal set for 175 books, and I think I just passed that, so I'll probably have between 175 and 200 books by the end of the year. I don't like to put like a number on my, like, I don't know, I feel weird about putting numbers on stuff because sometimes like things get busy in my life and I don't read as much, which some people may be thinking 175 books is amazing. One year, I think like 2 or 3 years ago, I read almost 400 books, but life has been busy and I just want to tone down the books that I'm reading, if that makes sense. Like, I want to pick up really, really good books rather than picking up a lot of books and my rating average be like 3 stars. I want to pick up less books and have my rating be like, average rating be higher. So I think this year my average rating is like 4.2, which is really good because previously it was like just a 4.0. So yeah, that's just a, you know, reflection. I'm not mad about it. I'll probably do 175 books for next year. Also, my reading journal only goes up to 200, but I could not see myself reading 200 books plus every year now. Like, I just can't do that anymore. And then the last one is after 2024 reading, what are you prioritizing in 2025? So I tried a lot of different genres in 2024, and I'm not mad about it. Like lit fic, Sally Rooney, I read those. I want to read some Frederick Bachman. I bought some of his books. I've stepped out of my comfort zone. I read a lot more fantasy romances this year, and I really enjoyed that. I took a step away from dark romances this year. I also feel like there haven't been that many good dark romances. Yes, I've tried Rena Kent. Rena Kent is not for me. Do not comment that you need to read that. I've read them. I tried. I do not like her dark romances. So yeah, I just haven't read a lot of like what I was expecting, like historical romances. I love a historical romance. I just haven't picked up a lot of them this year, which makes me kind of sad. So yeah, I've read more historical fiction this year. I have a historical fiction book club with Christy from Christy Reads a Lot. It's called Leave It to the Pros, which I love that we're reading more historical fiction because I do love that genre, and I have a lot of books that I want to read backlist wise. Yeah, I'm not mad about exploring new genres. I want to read more fantasy rather than fantasy romance. Like, I love both of them, just because I love a good fantasy and I love like any type of world building and stuff like that. So I want to branch out. I definitely have some of those books on my 2025 TBR. I want to read more new authors, like new to me authors, stuff like that. So yeah, like I love what I've read this year. I've branched out a lot. I've kind of like found what I love and don't love. And I want to continue reading like more into those genres next year. So yeah, I hope you stick around. I love doing this tag because it has a lot of different questions, and I think whatever genre you read, you can answer these questions. And yeah, you can let me know in the comments down below if you have any books to comment on, books you want me to get to in 2025, books you would want to recommend to me. If you made it this far and you want to let me know, leave me a snowman emoji in the comments down below because it's getting cold here and I'm really hoping that we have snow this winter. Fingers crossed. Yeah, leave me a snowman in the comments down below if you made it this far. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content from me. As always, I hope you're living a novel life, and I will see you in my next one.